What's up guys, welcome back, and in this video I'd like to modify our Laravel API to accommodate different users. So in the last video you may have noticed that no matter who we log in as, we always get these same to-dos. So if we log in as this person, we're always going to get this set of to-dos because that's how we made our API initially. If we look at our database, we only have a to-dos table which is global and it has no reference to any of the users. So let's fix that and let's make our to-dos belong to a user. So it looks like we need a one-to-many relationship between users and to-dos. And the only change we have to make on the database is add a user ID column here, which references a user for each to-do item. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go into our code, into our migrations, and for the to-dos here, let's just add a user ID in here. So I'm going to paste it in. We're just adding a new field for user ID, just an integer, and we're adding a foreign key constraint on the user ID, and it belongs to the users. Let me just line this up. And I am going to do a PHP artisan migrate fresh. Okay. But since we did that, we removed all of our users and we have to install Passport again. So let's go ahead and do that. Passport install. And we need this new client secret in our environment file. So down here, right here. So a new one. And let's check if our app correctly makes new users. So Andre, password is password. Okay. And let's make another one. User at user.com, password. Okay, let's try logging in. Okay, so we're good. So let's continue making that one-to-many relationship between users and to-dos. So back to our code. Let's go to user model. And let's define to-dos. And it's going to be empty. And we're going to return this has many app to do. And let's define the inverse as well. We probably don't need this, but I like to do it anyways. User and return this belongs to app user. Okay. Okay, cool. Now let's go into our routes API and let's take a look at our endpoints here. So we have a few options here. So now we have users associated with our to-dos, and one option is to have an endpoint like this. So we want a specific user's to-dos, so we can do users/id/to-dos. And this would be a good option if we're making like a public API that other people consume. It's following RESTful practices. But the other option, which is what I'm going to do, is just to leave our endpoints, and then from within our to-dos controller, here we'll specify the logged in user, and we'll just change our eloquent query based on the logged in user. So let me show you what I mean. Let's start off with this endpoint. So before we were just grabbing everything, and now we want to limit that to only the logged in user. So we'll do to do where user ID, that's that new field we just made, is equal to the logged in user's ID. So if we just do auth user, we'll get the logged in user. And instead of all, we can just call the get function. And let me save that. But now in our routes API, we have to make sure that this endpoint that we just changed is wrapped within an auth API middleware, like this one is. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a route middleware auth API, and I'm going to make it a route group, so we can just group everything within here. Okay. And we can stick this one in here. We no longer need this middleware. So let's put that in there. And let's also put that new one we just modified in here. And we can also stick this logout one that we made a few videos ago, and we can take out the middleware here. Okay, cool. Now let's go into our database and let's add some to-dos in here. Okay, so I have 2 to-dos for each user. And let's see when we log in as each user if we're getting the correct to-dos. So back to our app. I'm not sure who I'm logged in as here. Okay, so that doesn't work. Okay, so let me try again. I am going to log out. I'll log in as, I think this one was the first one. Okay, so I'm getting an 401 unauthorized response because we're not sending through the header in our Vue code. So let me go into my Vue code. This is our Vue code, back into our store. And like we were doing when we were logging out, we have to do this now when we're retrieving the to-dos. I believe it was called retrieve to-dos. Yeah, it is. Okay, so where's that? Right here. We have to set the header. And now, see if that works. There you go. Okay, so it's getting everything because I incorrectly forgot to change this. So I'm going to change this to 2. I'm going to change this to 2. And now if I refresh, okay, so now we're getting the correct to-dos. Let's log out of this user and let's log in as the other user. So user@user.com, password. And you can see that we're getting the correct to-dos. But if you saw, the other person's to-dos quickly flashed out. So you saw them for a brief second, and then they were refreshed with the new person's to-dos. Let's see why that happens. So let's go into Vuex, and you can see there's 2 to-dos here, which correspond to this user. If we log out, I think we have to clear this to-dos array as we log out, because if you'll see if we log out, it still exists here, and we don't want that. So let's clear it out. So let's go to our logout component, and let's just do something like this. Let's do it up here actually. So let's call an action that clears to-dos, clear to-dos, and then let's go to under store. Let's make it up here. Clear to-dos, context. And then we're going to call the mutation. We can just call the mutation directly from within our logout component, but I want to have a one-to-one mapping of actions to mutation. So we'll stick with this way. Clear to-dos. And I'm going to copy this, put it into our mutations. Sorry, here. And there should be state. And all we're going to do is state.todos is an empty array. Now, if we try this again, so let's just log in as someone. Okay, the to-dos are populated, but when we log out, they should be cleared. And they are cool. Okay, so now let's continue to change our API back to Laravel and just change these routes to accommodate for the logged in user. So the next one is adding to-dos. So I'm going to put this in here. And let's go back to our controller and let's work on that. Okay, so the validation is going to stay the same, but we can no longer just pass the data in because we need to pass in an extra field. So we have to pass in an array, and that extra field is user ID. So let's pass that in. And that's just the auth user ID, and the other two are the same. Request title and completed is request completed. And let's not forget to go into our to-do and add user ID to the fillable array. So user ID. Okay. So now this should work based on the user. So back into our app, let's log in as user 1, which was Andre. And let's add one. Andre adding to do. Okay, so I added it there. Let's see if it added it with the correct user ID. And it did. Let's check the other case. User at user.com. User adding to do. Look like it worked. Check the database. User adding to do with a user ID of 2. Cool. Okay, let's move on and let's work on the next one. Back into our routes. What's next? Next is updating a to-do. Okay, back into our controller, update. Okay, so this looks like it should still work because we're passing in the to-do ID and that hasn't changed. So let's see if that still works. Changed. Okay. See if that changed. And it did. But we have to add some authorization in here. Right now, any user can change any to-do because there's no check if this to-do belongs to the logged in user. So to demonstrate that, let me go into our REST client and I'm going to grab this token. So let me just grab this. Oops. Okay. And right now I'm logged in as user ID 2. So I'm going to paste it in here. Sorry, in here. So this is going to be unauthenticated, okay, because we didn't pass in the body. This is the one that gets all the to-dos. So I'm going to pass that in. And now we should get user. Yep, that's right. And I was trying to demo to you that we can change this. Okay, so I'm logged in as this user, user ID 2, but I want to demonstrate that we can change this one. So the to-do ID is 3. So if I do 3, this will be unauthenticated because I haven't passed the token in. Okay, but if I pass the token in, bearer, you'll see that we're going to change that. That's a to-do that doesn't belong to us. And there you go. We successfully changed this one, and this one does not belong to us. There you go. Okay, so we have to do a check. Right here, there's several ways to do this. You can make use of Laravel policies. You can utilize form requests. Or in our case, since this is just a simple app, I'm going to do it inline right here. So all we have to do is check if the to-do user ID does not equal the auth user ID. And if that's the case, then we can return an error. Return response JSON unauthorized. And let's give it a 401. Okay. So save that. And this should be unauthorized now. See, it's unauthorized. If we take that code out, it works. Okay, cool. Put that back in. Okay, what's next? Let's work on deleting, just deleting one. So I'm going to put this up here. And deleting is the same as updating. So we need this check as well. So I'm going to copy this. And right here, it's the same thing. So I'm just going to double check if I can delete my own. And I can, cool. Okay, back to our API. Now let's do update all. So back to our controller, where's update all? Right here. So all this does is change every single to-do with this variable that's being passed in. The only change we want is just put a where clause on it. To-do where user ID is equal to the logged in user ID. And that should work. So okay, so we only want to update user ID 2 to do 1 and user ID 2 2. So these two. Let's see if it only updates these two once we press that check all button. Okay, refresh, and that's good. See if it works the other way. Awesome. Okay, so what's the last one? The last one is this to-dos delete completed. So let's move it up. And let's see what's going on there. So destroy completed. So an array is being passed in of the IDs of the to-dos we want to delete. However, there is no validation that checks if those to-dos belong to us. So we have to add that in. So just to illustrate this, so right now, let's go into our app. Here's user ID 2 to-dos. Let me add one more. Okay. Sorry, there should be 2. So user ID 2 to do, so to do 2 and to do, say I want to delete these 2. So I would like to delete six and 9. So let me just make a comment in here so I can illustrate what I'm trying to do. So right now, I want to delete these 2. To do IDs we are passing in and want to delete. Okay. And we want to check if these 2 belong to the person that's logged in. So let's grab all of the users' IDs. So in this case, everyone with user ID 2, so it'll be 5, 6, and 9. So let me put that in. Let's duplicate this. 5, 6, and 9. And this is all of the users to do IDs. So all we want to do is check if this, we have to go through every item in this first array and check if it's within this array. So the 6 is in this array and the 9 is this an array. So we can successfully delete whatever's being passed in. If it was some other ID, say 10, that's not in here, then the validation would fail and we wouldn't proceed with that request. So let's go ahead and implement this. We'll make use of Laravel's collections to do this. So to-dos to delete is just the request that's coming in. Request to-dos. And let's make another variable called user to do IDs is auth user to do's, and we just want to grab their to do's and just return the IDs because that's all we want. So function value return value ID, or if you want, let's name this to do. Oops. Okay. Sorry, that's missing a $sign. Okay. And I'm also missing a semicolon. Okay, now let's make a new variable called valid, and I am going to make a collection out of to-dos to delete because that's coming in as an array and I want to use collection functions on it. And I'm just using the every function, which just iterates over each item, and it takes a callback and that takes in the value and the key, and we have to pass in the user to do IDs, and now we just want to return, we're just checking if this is in here. So return, again we're using another collection function, return to do IDs if it contains the value, then that should do it. And if it's not valid, so if not valid, then we can just do this. So let's test this out. I'll test it out in here in our REST client so it's easier to see. So let me just paste that token in. I think it's still my clipboard. It's not. It's in here. It's in here. Okay, so let's use that example I had. So this request should be valid. Let's try an invalid one first. So 6, 9. Let's try adding 4 in there, and 4 doesn't belong to us. So I'm going to make another one here. So we'll do 6, 9, and 4. And since 4 does not belong to us, this should return an error, unauthorized. And I have an error. It should be $. See, it's unauthorized, but if I remove this one, 6 and 9 belong to us, so that should work. Just remove this and delete it. That should actually return a JSON response, but let's change that now. But that should have worked. We change that. Let's check our database, see if they're deleted. So 6 and 9, these two should be gone when I refresh. And they're gone. Awesome. Oops. Okay. So let me test it from within the app. Let's refresh this. Blah, blah, 2, 3. Okay, so let's just see if we can actually delete our own with no errors. And we can. Cool. Awesome. So there you have it, guys. We managed to modify our Laravel API so our to-dos now have users associated with them. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.